Hey, Pastor Josh here. We are reading Mark chapter 15, verses 6 through 15. Pilate delivers Jesus to be crucified. Now, at the feast, he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked. And among the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. So we got this man who was involved in some sort of insurrection, some sort of rebellion. Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he usually did for them. So they came up to him and said, "Hey, Pilate, can we have somebody released to us?" And Pilate, I think sometimes, if we're not careful when we look at the Pilate story, oftentimes we will, because of some statements in the text, that we will think Pilate is really. He's just really forced to crucify Jesus, and that he really thinks Jesus is innocent. And I don't think that's totally the case. I think Pilate definitely had some toyings in his heart on whether this should be done or not. But Pilate, at the end of the day, was a very crude and mean man, and he wanted to use this as an opportunity to kind of humiliate the Jewish authorities, particularly the Sanhedrin, the chief priests, because these are people that he would day in and day out be having issues with and problems with. They disdained, obviously, Roman occupation. They didn't want the Romans there. They thought they were lesser humans. They were Gentiles, and so they were making their land defiled. So there was a lot of animosity between Pilate and the ruling Jewish elite. And so I'll point out a few of those places that sometimes we may say, "Oh, it looks like Pilate wants to set Jesus free," but in reality, he's just wanting to be mean, be a jerk to the religious authorities. So we'll look at that. So, and the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he usually did for them. And he answered them, saying, "Do you want me to release for you the King of the Jews?" Well, that's not what the crowd is coming up to ask about. They're wanting Barabbas. They're wanting this big insurrection stuff. Everybody has now turned this idea of Jesus being the Messiah, whether this is a different crowd or whatnot, the massive people that are there are not concerned about Jesus. And so Pilate uses the opportunity to call Jesus the King of the Jews. Not because he believes he's the King of the Jews, just because he wants to say, oh, you want me to release for you your king, the one that I have, the one I have tied up, the one I have in prison right now. You want me to give you your king back? He's using it as a way of potentially mocking. I think John even brings that out a little bit more. For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priest had delivered him up. And so it's not that he said, "Oh, these religious leaders have taken Jesus and have delivered him over to me, and I'm going to try to free him." Pilate really, from the character that we know of him historically, that doesn't quite fit with his character. He's saying, "Oh, the guys that I'm always having issues with, the guys I'm always fighting with, they they're jealous of this Jesus. I'm going to exploit it, and I'm going to use this to humiliate them." So he realizes they're envious. They want him dead. Pilate realizes the religious leaders are, so he uses the opportunity to mock Jesus and mock the religious leaders. So he perceived that not that he was really truly trying to free Jesus, even though I think there's hints that there was some torture in his heart. Verse 11, but the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have him released for them Barabbas instead. Of course, the chief priests are like, no, no. So you see the problem that Pilate is forcing on the chief priests. uh-oh, the chief priests are thinking, oh, is Jesus going to get free? Well, we don't want that to happen. So the chief priests are going out in the crowd trying to get them all stirred up, saying, no, you all need to be asking for Barabbas. He's the big insurrectionist. He's the big rebel that we need freed. And of course, all of this is sin. They're being envious, jealousy. If you're jealous of anybody or something somebody else has, that's a terrible thing. You should confess that. And especially if that envy and jealousy is causing you to stir up some sort of crowd or stir up some sort of problems and issues. No, that's what jealousy will do if you let it sit. You're going to stir up all kinds of problems in your own heart and in the lives of other people. And so Pilate is just saying this so that the chief priests are going to worry about what the crowd is going to do. And Pilate again said to them, notice his language, then what shall I do with the man you call the King of the Jews? What am I going to do with the man you all call? You all call him the King of the Jews. The guy that I have tied up right now, you all call him the King of the Jews. He's using that terminology because he knows the religious leaders are especially envious of him. He's using it as a way to mock them and to kind of get at them. But then the crowd turns and starts saying something absolutely horrendous. And then they cried out, crucify him, kill him. And Pilate said to him, why? What evil has he done? I think it has turned a corner here to where Pilate really is starting to realize, okay, this crowd is rabid. This crowd wants him dead. What evil has he done? I think he's still playing into the hand of, well, let's make you beg for what has your king done? What has he done that is wrong? And of course, the attitude we need to adopt here is Jesus doesn't do anything wrong. He hasn't done anything evil or wrong. And then rather than responding to Pilate and telling him the evil that Jesus did, which he didn't do any, what did they do? But they shouted all the more. It's just this rabid hatred of God. Crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. That is all they have. They have no true argument. They have no true charge to bring against Jesus. They are just yelling, crucify him, crucify him. So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. And right there would be an example. Pilate wishing to satisfy the crowd would be an example for us not to follow. Pilate is doing what the crowd wishes. At the end of the day, Pilate is wanting peace. He's not going to push his little game of what he's going to do with Jesus against a crowd that potentially could actually turn into a mob, turn into some sort of rioting crowd. No, he's going to do it to satisfy the crowd. How many times do we do things to satisfy the people around us rather than seeking to satisfy the Lord? That should be our desire, to satisfy and please God above all else. I pray that has been a blessing to you. I'll see you in the next video.